So hello and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another Project Cars 2 video, where in today's video I'm going to be looking over 10 of my top tips. So with the way the world currently is with the current pandemic, there's more and more people picking up Project Cars 2, especially since it was free on the store, the Xbox store. So I wanted to just dive in and add some of my top tips to all those new to the game, which might help them get more from the game and just be more competitive. I'd also just like to take a minute to welcome the ladies to the channel. Usually I just take a little look on my analytical stuff from time to time and noticed I'd picked up 0.2% of a female audience. So welcome to the channel, ladies, and hopefully I'll have further content that keeps you interested in coming back to the channel and enjoying sim racing like the males out there. So welcome to the channel. Now this top 10 might not be the most popular top 10 tips that you would expect to find. Now I'll cover the reasons why I chose these as my top 10, and I certainly do think these will make you faster as a newcomer to the game, and even if you're a professional. So let's get into it, and let's start by looking at the Ghost. So you join me here at turn 1 of the current community event using the Porsche, I think it's just a Porsche 911 around Imola, and you can see that straight away just off the bat, turning into turn 1, I'm just carrying far too much speed, puts me out of shape into turn 2, and you can see how much further ahead the Ghost was during the first portion of the video. Now as you keep attacking this and you keep trying to get a better line, you gradually start to see your entry speeds better, and just trying to follow the original Ghost to see where he's coming into the corner and just how much extra speed can be carried through certain phases of the corner. So using the Ghost really does give you that insight into how much speed can actually be carried into a corner, and just really trying to replicate what you see on the screen, really just trying to follow the line that the previous driver's taken, which just allows you to get much more competitive times, and it just gives you that confidence that you can carry more speed using a better line through certain aspects of the corner. Again, just looking here at Hockenheim in the GT1 series, I just allow the Ghost to get a little bit further ahead. I just brake as I go over the line just so that I can see the sort of line that he's taking, how much circuit he's using, and then I just try and replicate the same thing. Obviously your setups might be different, so this might allow you to understand where in your setup you might need to change a few things so that you can carry that extra speed, or you can add more rear downforce or something, just something that helps. So that's the Ghost. So as I mentioned at the start, these are in no particular order, and number 2 is just because you're on pole. Don't think that you're safe in any way whatsoever because you've managed to bang in that perfect lap and you've managed to get on pole position. Always pay attention to the rear view mirror. Looking at the top of the screen, you can see the driver on the left hand side is definitely looking at getting down the inside. Now he's going to cause me a real issue as we come into the turn 1. He just gets alongside and I can't actually turn into the corner. Now obviously it's going to be very annoying, and even when he comes around the back of me and gives me a little tap to say that he's still here, I don't see how he thought he could possibly get round braking as late as he did, but I just return that little favour and give him a little bit of a love tap around the back end of lap 1. Again, I've managed to get on pole position as per usual really, and end up totally cocking up the start. I usually hover around 7,000 RPMs, but it just bogs down slightly and I get a terrible start off the line here, which puts me in the middle of the pack really going into turn 1. Got numerous cars alongside, and the whole aim of the game really is to try and stay out of trouble, but I just seem to get tangled up in this as the car spins around, knocks me out onto the side of the circuit, and there goes my lead completely. Game wasted. I think I do actually end up finishing 3rd, but not without a massive battle trying to get there. So once again I've managed to get myself on pole position, and just really watching the rev monitor now, getting good traction off the line, not too much wheel spin, and just wanting to see the rest of the pack behind you, I can move over and take my line into the turn 1, and at least I can fight another day and I'm not tangled in that massive crash behind, and I can at least go on to actually win this race. So in order to perfect all these things, let's move on to number 3 and practicing your starts. Now, one venue I choose to do this at more than any other really is Watkins Glen International, or even the short version of the circuit. It's still got the same set to 1, where it's not a particularly demanding set to 1, and I'll explain how I use it. The one thing I would always choose to do before the start is make sure traction control is off. I don't want the traction control to be kicking in and just bogging the engine down at the start of the race, which is going to result in less traction off the line. But obviously you're still going to be after handling how much traction or how much grip you lay down, so you're not going to want to over rev the engine too much that you're getting lots of wheel spin off the line. Maybe not so apparent in the GT3 class, but certainly in later classes, as we'll look in a few moments. So as you can see here, I've set off from the starting point and just skipped on a little bit further, and you can see I'm coming up to set to 1. Now just look at the time, which is 34.9, and just going to go through different types of rev ranges really off the line, holding the accelerator down all the way, and then one of my favourites really is to hover it around the 7,000 mark really for most GT3 cars, and then again I'll just go to set to 1. It's not a really tough set to 1 to navigate, and then you're just looking at the sort of time that you're going to finish with at the end of set to 1, just topping out really in 5th gear, and you can see we've taken almost a second really off that, so it really does pay dividends just to practice your starts. And obviously cars like the one we're looking at here, the vintage F1s, there's just so much torque through the wheel, and you start setting off without understanding how to get the power down, and you're just going to end up in the wall spinning out, or you're going to have not enough power on to actually set off, and then you're left behind again. So practicing your starts is really important. It really can put you in a good position to attack turn 1, or it can get you in the lead, and it can lose you the race. A poor start, it puts you in a position where you're battling with people that aren't in your same race. You could just get rid of them like that and just go underneath them, and then you're free to carry on the rest of the race. But I certainly recommend spending a little bit of time in whichever car you're choosing to race, whichever class you're choosing to race in. Understand how the car accelerates, whether you might need to add a little bit of rear toe to get the car performing in a straight line. So let's move on to number 4, and knowing the pits. So what do I mean by knowing the pits? Well, obviously where you're going to pull into the pit itself, where you're going to bang the pit stop or pit speed limiter, and just where your box is going to be. Knowing which box you're going to be pulling into, especially during a busy pit stop session, is going to pay dividends and make the pit stop most efficient as possible. When it's in manual mode and you're pulling into pit positions that aren't yours, you're going to be wondering what the hell's going on. The same goes for when you're leaving the pits, like here at Long Beach. There's a very long pit exit line, which seems very strange when you're coming out the pits, and it can easily cause you to pick up a penalty if you're crossing over that line. Another very awkward pit entry is Oschersleben. As we come in here, you don't want this to be your first entry into the pits. Do a little bit of a recce run during the qualifying session. Know how to get into the pits and carry as much speed through the pit entry as possible. If there's a mandatory stop or a requirement to use the pits itself, damage might be on. So just get used to coming into the pit, know where your pit box is going to be. It will certainly make the pit stop more efficient, and it may allow you a little bit of time to go into your menus to select a different strategy, or just give you time to do something that you might need to do during your pit stop, or you might just want to take a little drink of water. Also knowing the exit strategy as well. It's a very awkward exit as you're coming out of Oschersleben, and you just want to make it the most easiest exit possible and carrying as much speed as you can. You might be battling for a position as you come out of the pits. So know your pits, know how to get in and out and where your box is. Another point regarding pit stops was from another video I did quite some time ago now, in how to get your pit stop time down below a second. So spend a little bit of time watching this video. I'll link it in the description or just up above, but spend a bit of time learning how you can adjust your pit stop times. So moving on to number 5, check the lobby details. Now, having qualified, you've got 2.5 minutes here to look over what's involved in the race itself. Things that are going to be important is damage on, is there mechanical failures, is fuel going to be used during the race, how tyre wear is going to be affected, what time of day the race is going to be. If it's slightly different, practice session was at the hottest time of the day, and then qualifying was at a colder point of the day, and the race itself is going to be in the middle of the day. Is there going to be a mandatory pit stop? Is there going to be a formation lap? Am I going to need to warm the tyres? Just look over all these things. What sort of penalties are there going to be? Could I go over the pit penalty line on the way out of the pits? Just numerous things to try and give yourself an edge during the race. It's really important just to look over. It might cause you to make changes to your setup, and especially like the fuel amounts. Say for example you're running 5 laps, it's always a good idea to put 6 laps worth of fuel in. I've done on 2 occasions now, I've actually ran out of fuel just on the last lap because I haven't put enough in, especially during timed sessions. Just know how much fuel you're going to need in the car. All these things are really worth looking over. But moving on to number 6, be comfortable being close. I don't mean cuddling your partner or a friend. Just get time behind another car. It will pay so much dividends in the future if you can drive close to the car in front. One thing I'd recommend doing is getting fast with a ghost, getting as close as you can as the ghost, and just trying to stay on your line through all the corners as close as you can to your own ghost. Definitely one to practice. You never know when an opportunity is going to arise when you're going close to a competitor and he makes a tiny mistake which allows you to get past in some of the most unusual places. Just joining me here in another hugely competitive default setup race where I'm really looking in my rearview mirror trying to stop an attack coming from behind, whilst also trying to look for a way past the guy in front. He makes a tiny mistake, just taps my rear end, but there's no damage on anyway, and I continue to finish this race in first place, albeit after a little bit of a battle. Which leads me on to number 7 and using that rear view mirror. As you can see, I'm getting a lot of heat from the rear with someone that's managing to run this car a little bit better than I am, albeit in a default setup. Now using that rear view mirror can give you a lot of information as to where on the circuit the other driver is much quicker. Going through this section is obviously going to try and come up the inside, so I'm just really trying to position the car where I can sort of block him coming past. Now I'm not wanting to weave around the circuit and be unsporting about whether he can come past or not, but I'm trying to put my car in a position that makes it very hard for him to get past, and it's going to force him to take the long route round. I'm not going to allow him to slip down the inside. I'm going to hold on the apex of the corners just to off-put his acceleration, and maybe I can get a better run out of the corner. As you can see here, he's coming tight on the right hand side, and I'm just going to try and block this corner off so not to allow him to get past. And I know this is going to be an area where he's going to try again and again, lap after lap. Also in this little sector here, I could see, just looking through the rear view mirror, that he cuts the circuit and instantly gets a 3-second penalty. Now these things are all good to know because later on in the race it may be very important as to whether he's picked up a penalty or not, which it certainly was here. As you can see, allow him just too much room to get alongside there, and he ends up just pushing me a little bit wide as he comes off the apex of that corner, but it was a fair move, and hats off to him for taking the lunge down the inside. Now it's very clear through this last sector that he was always fast through this sector of the circuit, and it was a really good race, very competitive. Thoroughly enjoyed the race, but obviously I've led for a full 20 minutes almost after managing to get past the guy in first place that made a little error. But obviously on the run into this corner, I know he's got a 3-second penalty, so I know all I have to do is stay within 3 seconds of him, even though I picked up that 1 second penalty within 2 seconds, and it gives me the win. Albeit he still thought he'd won the race, I think, although I would have given him the race anyway, because he was definitely competitive through that one. So use your mirrors. So moving on to number 8, frame rate over graphics. Now this is something that all PC users generally struggle with, because it's something that's just so important to try and keep that frame rate up. If you move on to PC, I've heard from numerous people that just the difference in frame rates allows you to be so much more accurate with your inputs. So just trying to dull down the visuals to increase the performance of the frame rate is something that's going to allow you to be more accurate throughout your inputs, and just be just more fluid with how the graphics move, just less staggery as you're just trying to navigate the circuit. Another post-processing filter, if you turn that off, it's going to just reduce the strain on the console itself, and all these other things that are just adding glamour to the game. If you turn them off, it's just going to allow the frame rates to run a lot better. The movement will run a lot smoother. Yes, you might not have certain aspects looking as beautiful really as they can be, but the game will certainly run a lot better. So if you already follow my channel, you'll know that I spent quite a bit of time recently looking at all the GT3 cars and putting them through the paces using a fairly default setup at a number of circuits. It's still an area that I'm wanting to pursue really and do a few more of these, but they are really time consuming. So I just tried to put out a few other videos in between doing some of these. But one thing I learned through doing this was just how different each car handles. Now we spend time and time looking at setups, trying to find things that are going to allow us to drive the car a certain way, when a lot of these cars handle very differently even as a default setup, and you may find that one of them really does suit your driving style without spending lots of time messing around with setups to try and get it perfect. Another thing that I would look at generally is just adjusting the brake bias, which was something another YouTube member mentioned, Nico Schober I think his name was, a.k.a. the Raptor, and he managed to set some world records just using the default setup by just purely adjusting the brake bias itself. So spend a little bit of time in each of these cars without looking at the setups, and just spend, as we've moved on to the next one here, just some time at the circuits. I can't emphasize enough how much it's more about driving the circuits and learning the circuits as opposed to changing the setup for a car at a certain circuit. Just spending an hour at a circuit without adjusting anything on the car first and then start adjusting things, you'll learn so much about how the circuit works, where the best line is into the corner, whether you should be touching certain curbs or not. There's just so much to learn about each circuit, whether you can carry more speed. Like I said, use the ghosts to try and learn different lines into the corners, but it really is a case of learning the circuit is where the speed is going to come, and just having ultimate knowledge about the circuit itself before you start looking at whether there's a problem with how the car's handling. So that was one of my main ones really. Don't think it's all in the setup that you're slow, because a lot comes down to drivability and hugely down to knowledge of the circuit. So number 9 is learn the circuit. Spend some time at each circuit that you're wanting to perform at. No matter what car you're driving or what class you're wanting to drive in, try the different cars within that class as well. But ultimately, spend the time learning the circuit, get it nailed, get good at it. So moving to the number 10 spot, and tyre temperatures. different compounds, know which tyre to be on for certain track temperatures. Now this is going to take a little bit of time to work out, but I have done a video on this, especially for the GT3 class, and the track temperature plays a huge part in whether the tyres are going to switch on and work well from the off, or whether you're really going to have to spend numerous laps, especially like on a hard tyre. In cold conditions, you're going to need to spend 2 to 3 laps to get the tyre within a temperature that it's going to perform well at, whereas the soft tyre will generally perform straight out of the pit for the first flying lap, and you could waste numerous laps trying to get the tyre within a temperature range if you've got a very short period of time to set a qualifying lap. For example, you might just want to go straight out on the soft tyre, get 1 lap round, and then you can bang in a flying lap. You might very well be changing onto hard tyres for the rest of the race, but in order to get out there and be quick, you need to get the tyre up to temperature. So if you're new to the game, you come from something like Forza, you're going to need to spend some time getting these tyres warm. It's not just a case of getting the car and drive and there's ultimate grip. You need to spend time weaving around the circuit, driving along with your foot on the brake pedal to get your brakes up to temperature. It is a real temperature game, whether the cars or whether the tyres are running at a good temperature or not, or whether they're running too hot. You might want to change the compound of the tyre because the tyres are getting far too hot, especially at circuits like Watkins Glen, where the hard tyre is usually the best tyre. So just spend some time learning about tyres and what sort of temperatures they work best in. So probably not the usual top 10 that you would imagine, but certainly a top 10 that I would choose to spend a little bit of time looking at each one of them and just getting some knowledge about each one. But thanks for watching the video, and keep yourselves safe, people, and ciao for now.